So today's Safety First, we're going to be talking with Brian Germain about canopy stalls. Hey, Brian, how's it going today?
Hello, Dave. I'm doing great. Thrilled to be back here on Skydiving Radio.
Today's topic is canopy stalls. We'd like to learn a little bit about the aerodynamics of it. And then also talk about whether or not it's something maybe we should practice, how we can go about practicing them safely, and what some of the recovery procedures might be like.
Yeah, perfect. I love talking about stalls. So the first thing to recognize is that a stall is not caused by low airspeed specifically. It's caused by a high angle of attack. So in other words, the angle of the wing to the relative wind. If you nose it up, eventually the air can't follow the curve of your wing, and you find that separation resulting in a spiking of the drag forces and a serious reduction of the lift forces, and then gravity sort of takes over. So let's talk specifically on a parachute. As we start adding drag to the trailing edge, and we're going to start for our discussion on steering toggle stalls, brake stalls. So I start adding brakes. As I go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, I will achieve a point where the parachute is now kind of going into a sink just before the stall. And if I hover before it actually, goes away, if I leave my hands in, say, this like 90-something% brakes, I have to recognize that because the angle of attack is so high, right, I'm actually slipping in my glide ratio to a very, very steep angle. It's actually stalled, right? I mean, aerodynamically, there are no wings that stall at 35 or 45 degree angle of attack. At least not without slats and vortex generators and winglets and droop tips. So our wings are not doing what we think they're doing. We think of a stall as when the parachute deflates, right? When the cell pressurization goes away, and on many parachutes it goes into a fortune cookie where the brake lines meet behind the parachute. In some cases on lower aspect ratio, more square-shaped parachutes, it'll just sort of lurch back and then depressurize. But it would be my argument that it's actually already stalled, and that there is a phase in between the stall and the depressurization that I call parachutal. Your wing has turned into a parachute.
A round parachute.
Yeah. It's just not a really good-looking round parachute, but it's dragging behind you and it's slowing down your descent rate. And when you continue increasing the angle of attack beyond that, now she really goes away and you feel it. Whoa!
Would you say that is the position like of an accuracy canopy coming into the tuffet? Is that sort of the mode that parachute is in, and the real deep brakes when they're sort of sinking?
Yeah, exactly, and that's why they put split stabilizers on there to leak air around the sides and vent it through the bottom surface. They actually put holes in the bottom of the canopy so that when it is in this sink mode, it's still fully pressurized in terms of its internal pressurization. So it's kind of neither here nor there, except for the fact that I would recommend that when you practice stalls, that you linger in this phase for a period of time. That if you go straight from high-speed flight to full honk, where you bury your toggles all the way in, you swing your pitch, where your body gets out in front of the parachute, and the angle of attack exceeds, but it happens in such an aggressive manner that you can end up in line twists. You can end up with a really aggressive recovery where the parachute goes under you, possibly even gift wrapping you in the extreme cases. Not all that much fun. So if you kind of bring it down near the three-quarter brake location, and then you slowly add the brakes to the point where the parachute is now fully parachutal. And you keep the canopy over your head. You don't let it turn, because if it turns when the stall breaks, the low wing stalls first, and you have a lot of yaw energy. The canopy wants to pinwheel into line twists. So keep it over your head, don't let it turn, and then slowly and symmetrically add the brakes to full stall. Now, most people know that when you get there, you don't want to just drop your steering toggles, unless you want the parachute to dive in front of you and under you. So you let it up until the wing starts to recover. Now here's the thing. When it starts to recover, it's usually really early. It's much sooner than you think. So really, you just need to lift up your brakes an inch or two, just a little bit. The other part is that we get lulled into a false sense of security and false sense of relaxation because when the stall happens, what happens to your line tension? It goes away. All of your lines go slack. And so consequently, as you reach that stall point, you relax your arms a little bit because there's nothing to pull against. And as soon as you lift up your hands and the wing starts to fly again, suddenly the toggle pressure goes through the roof. And it wants to pull your toggles all the way up, which is what results in excessive loss of altitude, not anticipating the loss of toggle pressure and then the subsequent sort of boost of toggle pressure. As the air pressure hits the bottom of the canopy, as the air pressure rams into the cells, trying to straighten the cell out. So getting ready to stiffen your arms as you lift your arms up and hold them down. Don't let your hands get pulled up.
So to recover, we want to let our hands come up some, right? So that the canopy can lower the angle attack enough to start flying again. But you're saying let's not let them come up so much that it just dives straight at the ground. Exactly.
Yeah. And symmetrically as well. When that canopy starts flying again, it's pretty aggressive. And if you're asymmetrical, it probably is going to spin into line twists, and at the very least, it's going to turn quite a bit. So get good at this. I mean, what if you're sinking it into a backyard and you start to make a turn and you load up the canopy more because of the turn, and even on a parachute that doesn't stall, even though you have your hands all the way down, now because you're in a turn, you load it up more because of the centrifugal forces building up, what we call the load factor. And so now the parachute goes away. Either you're skilled in the art of recovering your wing quickly, or you're going to be pushing up daisies. So I suggest the skill thing. And you have to explore the stall, at the very least, to kind of get over your fear of finishing the flare. Anything within my flight that's provoking my fear, I need to explore it carefully and little by little. I call it looking for the monster under the bed, right? What happens if you don't look for the monster under the bed when you're a little kid? The monster gets bigger. So you got to practice the stalls.
What's a safe altitude to be doing this at? Is there some kind of like a hard deck when you're in your canopy courses where we say we're not going to do this maneuver below this altitude?
Well, obviously, you're going to want to do this at or above cutaway altitude. I would suggest doing it significantly above your lowest cutaway altitude because you want to have the opportunity to go to your handles gracefully and slowly and not feel rushed. Even in the worst case scenario, you still want to have the best case scenario reserved procedures.
And are there some parachutes where I used to do stalls a lot before I jumped the canopy that I'm jumping now, and I will stall my canopy a little bit now, but not fully. I guess I should say I won't let it fully depressurize. What would you say to somebody at a higher wing loading? Is it a good idea to fully stall, say a 2.0 or higher wing loaded canopy? Because it scares me.
Yeah, well, it's your gut telling you something that's actually pretty sane. I don't recommend savoring the stall on high performance canopies, but I do recommend tickling the stall. Feeling that point where, okay, that's the end of my flight, that's the location, that's the feeling, and this is what I got to do to get it back and flying quickly with minimal loss of altitude.
Right. Yeah, my fear with mine is if I let it go too far, I'm really afraid it's going to spin up on me. And maybe that's less likely with a bigger parachute. Is that accurate? Like if somebody, maybe a newer jumper that's jumping a lightly loaded parachute, maybe they can get it a little farther than somebody jumping something really fast?
Sure. Well, when you've got more inlet drag, when you have more drag overall, the parachute is not going to be spinning around the yaw axis quite so easily. But every parachute can be stalled and safely recovered to flight. The only question is, how long are you holding it? So just tickle the stall, find out where it is. And also, the other part of this story is the parachute really does want to recover, doesn't it? I mean, if you think about it, what do you do every single jump. You stow your toggles so that the tail is pulled down. You squish the thing up into a little ball, and you trust that the relative wind from underneath is going to open this thing, and it pretty much always does it.
It's completely stalled on every deployment, is what you're saying.
Right. Well, it's not stalled, right? It's your brakes are not locked down past the stall.
But it's completely deflated.
It's deflated, and the brakes are locked down. So what we're trying to do here in the recovery from a stall is hold the hands down roughly to that position where your brakes were stowed, right? Because the testing proved that this parachute wants to open when the tail is cupped. Now, some parachutes do open fairly well without the brakes stowed. Most of them do not. So I would suggest sort of playing with that and seeing how much recovers it, but also working with active pitch dampening as you recover. So you brakes surge, and then apply the brakes again. So you apply the brakes to the stall, you let it up, it starts recovering, and then as she starts diving, you hit the brakes again to keep the wing over your head.
All right. Brian, that's a very interesting topic, and one I'm sure that you teach at all your Canopy courses. Where can our listeners, maybe one of our listeners wants to take one of your Canopy courses, how can they find out where you're going to be, or how can they maybe get you to their drop zone?
It's actually much easier than you think. If you go to bigairsports.com, there's a whole page on that stuff, and there's downloadable forms. You can get the information sheet to print out at Manifest. There's also a sign-up sheet that you can stick in Manifest. And all you got to do is get 10 people. And it doesn't have to be 10 people from your drop zone. You can advertise at the other drop zones in the area. And usually a month in advance is more than enough. I just need to be able to get a reasonably priced flight. And then we work the price of the flight into everybody's cost. And I do this almost every weekend, so this is it's quite easy to create a course. Let's just get the ball rolling.
Is there a schedule of courses on your site as well, where people can maybe, if they don't want to try and organize one, they can travel and come to one of your courses that you're already doing?
Absolutely, yep. Yeah, there is a schedule on the site as well. So yeah, that'll help. The main thing I recommend is if it's mine or somebody else's Canopy flight course, do one every year. Don't just do one and say, "Hey, I know how to fly my parachute now." Well, you're not done. Every year you do a Canopy course, you're going to hear a different Canopy course. Every instructor you learn with, you're going to hear a different angle on it. But you got to remember, you're evolving. Your ears are getting calibrated to a new level of information every year, and you're going to have a new experience. So continue your process of learning, and you'll live longer.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. We're going to talk to you on the next episode, and can't wait.
Woohoo! Yes, indeed. Thank you for having me on.
What do you guys think of that?
I think you're afraid to tickle your stall.
Woohoo!